Welcome to Chocolaad Live, here with Stephen Alloy, and we're here to talk about The Who, and we're going to talk about, in particular, Keith Moon from The Who. We'll talk about the drummer, the amazing Keith Moon the Loon, the drummer.
Hey everybody, the amazing Keith Moon. I'm focusing to some extent on the album Tommy, as you can see behind us here, but The Who, an amazing group, and Keith Moon, really a singular individual, I would say. Not too many like him. I can't think of any. In fact.
Yeah, if you're just joining us again, we're going to be talking about Keith Moon from The Who. If you're joining us on replay, welcome, and we're so glad you're here. It's a Wednesday afternoon here in Omaha, and the weather was a little bit sketchy earlier today, but now it's it's actually pretty nice. I think today, maybe tomorrow, will be okay.
Yeah, day before Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And it's like, as Chris said, it was a little icy last night, so I'm wearing my Hawaiian shirt. I'm a conscientious objector to winter, but I think it's going to be winter whatever I do, but I don't have to like it. But yes, welcome and happy Thanksgiving, and let's get right into talking about
Keith Moon and The Who.
Yes.
And if you're joining us, if you're just joining us, we're going to be talking about Keith Moon from The Who, and we're going to be coming up with 10 questions that we would like to ask him. So, Steve, why don't you kick us off?
I have some questions. I must mention first a little background on Keith Moon and The Who from a personal standpoint. I actually saw The Who live when I was a very young guy. I had not yet turned 12, and I went to a Who concert. And this was 1968, so they had not released Tommy yet, although they were probably working. Well, it was probably had been written and might have been recorded.
Or they were recording in that process of recording it.
Yeah.
Or because it sounds like they did a lot of recording in between as they were actually they would be in the studio and then do concerts. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So I saw them in 1968, and it was my first rock and roll concert, and it might be, it was certainly one of my best concerts that I ever saw. The biggest memory of that all those years ago is Keith Moon, of course. Two bass drums. I had never seen anybody with two bass drums before, and not many drummers did. Ginger Baker did it around that same time.
Yeah, Ginger Baker from the Cream. So if you're not familiar with that, Ginger Baker from the Cream had the double bass. Mm-hmm. And so you saw him with the double bass?
So with double bass and just working them. He came out with like boxes of drumsticks. Like several boxes he carried. He had them all like sitting around. Probably a couple hundred drumsticks. They looked a lot like that, yeah. And he'd like whack the heck out of these drumsticks and flip them around, and then he'd throw them, or they'd slide out of his hand. He'd get a little sweaty, he'd just throw them into the crowd. I wound up actually with a drumstick that he had used.
You still have it?
No, unfortunately.
What happened to that drumstick?
Well, I think it was at the house I grew up in, my mom's house, and I think when she moved out, she had somebody sell a lot of her stuff, and I think they sold. It wasn't
like if they didn't have the story behind the drumstick.
Oh, yeah. No, it just looked like a drumstick.
Yeah.
It looked like, Steve thought he was going to play drums. No, that was Keith Moon's drumstick.
Yeah, it probably ended up like propping a window open.
Oh yeah, no, it probably got thrown away. So it's unfortunately gone forever. But as is Keith Moon, unfortunately too. But that was an amazing concert and just a manic player. But anyway, my first question actually doesn't relate to his playing or his double bass drums or that wonderful concert that I saw back in early '68. Another thing that Keith Moon is known for, in addition to being really an amazing drummer, is he used to love to play pranks. He had a real sense of humor.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was part of the. It started off as an accident. I think Pete poked his guitar through the ceiling, and from that moment on,
oh yeah, and they would smash their instruments. They did that in the concert that I saw.
But you're
smoke bombs and everything.
So you're talking more about the actual him wanting to do pranks.
But he would do practical jokes. I mean, one of them I read some funny ones. One he had his car actually equipped with a loudspeaker, and he would sometimes drive through neighborhoods saying, "Everyone, please evacuate."
Yeah, so but you have to put that in context. So this would have been this is post World War II, and so like when have you been doing this? This is like in the 50s or the 60s?
No, you've been doing this in the 60s. This is while he was with the Who. I mean, he was well known. I mean,
right? So,
people got close if they knew who it was, but he just.
So London, or you're anywhere in England in the 60s,
wherever you happen to be,
But if you're in the 60s, the Cold War, you're in the dead center of the Cold War.
Yeah.
And so you're going through, like, kids in class, just like today we have active shooter drills. They would have been doing duck and covers underneath the desks.
Yeah.
So you'd have been, you can you imagine you're sitting in your classroom, then an alarm goes off, and it's like, okay, boys and girls, it's time to get underneath your desk so as a nuclear bomb explodes. Because the Russians at the time, they had the medium range and short. They had medium range, short range nuclear weapons, and even the as they come across the Fulda Gap, they had nuclear artillery. And so like London, like England was minutes from being destroyed from the Soviet Union, and so the entire population is being trained from the memory of World War II, where they're just getting bombed from the Germans. And so now you've got Keith, who's like, but this goes into like I read this too, was he's born after World War II, so he doesn't have the full appreciation maybe of the folks that lived through it.
Yeah, right.
So this, like, folks who have lived through World War II, this may not come across as comedic. But yeah, no, I get you. Like, the prank is like it's a prank, all right, but it's like there's people that are going to be. This would be like driving around today and yelling "active shooter." You know, like how much like that is. That is.
Oh, it's edgy. Everything he did was a little edgy.
It's definitely edgy.
Everything he did was a little edgy.
Yeah, it was definitely.
He was that kind of guy. And he, another prank that I read about that I thought was kind of funny. He and another guy, he would arrange these pranks sometimes well in advance, and he and another guy went into a Marks and Spencer and started arguing about a pair of pants, and they each took a leg and were pulling at it, and they ripped them in two, and they were about to get in trouble with the Marks and Spencer, and he had his driver come in with the money for the pants, and he said, "Oh, those are the one-legged pants? I've been looking for those. I'll take two." And he paid for it. No, it's kind of funny.
Is that Peter Dougal or they call him Dougal? It was Peter Butler, his personal assistant.
I think it was. I think he was the guy that came in with the money. But I guess I would ask Keith what was his favorite prank. I know what my favorite prank is. I read one. He was also well known for destroying hotel rooms. He just would do that. It's not necessarily a positive thing, but my personal favorite is he was once checking out of a hotel and got in the car and they started to drive away. He goes, "Oh, wait a second." They stop the car, goes back in, goes up to his room, takes the TV, throws it out the window into the swimming pool, and just walks back down and says, "Yeah, I forgot to do that."
And he talks a little bit
that's
about
kind
this.
Of funny. I don't know.
Right, and he says, because I'm a celebrity, like people are like, "Oh, this is edgy. This is he's eccentric." If you're an average person and you go,
he would have been arrested.
Right.
Every day.
Even more than arrested. This is when they're giving lobotomies in the 60s, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They would have put you in the clinic and taken. They'd be like. I mean, he would have literally been a loon. He would have been totally, everyone else was doing this.
That was his nickname, Moon the Loon. That's what some called him.
Right.
Time, so.
Yeah. I mean, they did. So that's actually one of my questions. Mm-hmm. Like you talk about his pranks. He has a such larger than life personality, and they call him Moon the Loon. So. Does he actually like the name Moon the Loon? Because when you look at his theatrics, I mean, I was watching it was like an interview of him, and he's doing it deadpan serious, and they're asking him about pinball and why does he like playing the pinball? What is he's liking it? It was, and I didn't have to go back to figure out if this is actually a live interview or if he's doing this part of a sketch, but he's like deadpan serious and he says it's sexual. He says, you have all these balls rolling around this plate and they're silver and it's just, I love balls.
Some of that wound up going into one of the famous lyrics in Tommy, I think.
Well, right. But he plays the creepy uncle.
He does, right, in the movie,
The uncle that diddles. Mm-hmm. But we're not, before we get to the uncle that diddles.
No, I was thinking of the song Pinball Wizard.
Oh, Pinball Wizard. Right. Well, yeah.
But he did play Uncle Ernie in the movie, yes.
Yes, Uncle Ernie. Well, if you're just joining us, we're talking about Keith Moon from The Who. Mm-hmm. If you have any comments, make sure if you log into YouTube, you can start typing in chat. You can type in the chat. If you ask us questions, we'll attempt to answer your questions live here. But again, if you're watching us on replay, welcome, and just leave comments down in the comment section of YouTube. So where I was going on that question, we were talking about Keith Moon's favorite prank. My question is, I think the question I want to ask is, did you like the name Moon the Loon? Because that's kind of like rhyming. It's like kind of a rhyming nickname, and usually rhyming nicknames aren't people's favorite.
Right.
It's not the most creative nickname you can come up with somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a feeling he might have liked it though.
So you vote that he liked it?
I bet he did, because he really enjoyed being that guy.
I think he did
that
too.
Wild man.
But he's
I think he probably enjoyed that nickname.
Yeah. He was so when I was talking about on that. He was so deadpan. He was delivering the straight, because I thought he was going to deliver, like when they asked him about why would you like pinball, he had this look of he was so serious. It was like it was the look of you're asking you're asking your granddad. It was that look of you're asking your granddad, what the meaning of life is, and he's staring at you, and he tells you it's the one thing, or that was the kind of look Moon's given, and then he just delivers as it's sexual, and I like the balls rolling around, right? And you're just like you can't, it's so unexpected, and he delivered it so well. I was like, that's talent. Like he's got this comedic talent that's out there, and just being edgy. I mean, running around with a microphone and what he's doing, that's almost like Kathy Griffith with the beheaded Trump head, right? It's over the top on the edge, and it's built out there to offend. And so by calling him a loon, is that was where I was like, maybe he didn't like it, but maybe I mean I'm easily swayed either way. I think on that question, I just throw it out there because it's a rhyming nickname. Could you come up with something better?
I think given time, they were a creative bunch. They could have come up with a better name for him, probably.
Right, or other people like the news. You know what I mean? It's like Keith. Like Keith Moon, best drummer of all time.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, that was another nickname you probably liked too. But and that actually kind of leads to question 3 here. Before I ask another question about his pranks and his personality, I do want to touch a little bit on his music. I think it's interesting. Chris has done quite a few of these, and I've participated in a handful of them as well. The ones that I've participated in, we've really focused on very direct blues-oriented groups. Now, all rock and roll is blues-oriented, is blues-derived. There is that. But we've talked about the Doors, the Rolling Stones, very clear blues lines. I think the blues line with The Who is a little less direct, a little less clear. It's there, certainly. In fact, there's actually a Sonny Boy Williamson song on Tommy that they rewrote a little bit, but it's basically an old, Delta blues song. And so it's there, certainly, but they have a whole lot more influences maybe than some of the other groups that we've talked about. So musically, there's that. I think interestingly, too, he does have a couple of commonalities with some people that we've done earlier shows on. He was born in Wembley, the area of London, Wembley, or London Metro, and as was Charlie Watts, drummer of the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Now Charlie Watts is a few years older. They probably didn't know each other. They're very different personalities, so they probably wouldn't have been guys that hung together. But kind of interesting. They're both from the same neighborhood. Interesting too. Before he joined The Who, he was in a surf rock group, just like Ray Manzarek was in a surf rock group before he formed the Doors. So, surf rock was certainly you could hear that in some of his drumming. I'm a big surf rock fan as well, and surf rock drummers tend to play a little wilder maybe than some of the other drummers.
It's out front too. That beat, the drum beat, is out front in the music.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
and so
very much so.
If you think like before the Who, how much was the drums highlighted in the music as opposed to
not as much.
And so like with is what Keith did there by taking that kind of surf music was putting it out in front like that music to make it okay. I'm key like the drummer's now key to this group.
And it's interesting. This was an era where, in a handful of groups, the drummer really did start to become very prominent. I mean, the Who certainly, with Keith Moon, Cream, Ginger Baker that we just talked about, and and Led Zeppelin, John Paul Jones. I mean, there were some of these, or John Bonham. I'm sorry, were some of these were becoming a lot more prominent. With drums as opposed to before that drums really weren't that prominent, but I digress because my question really went back to his pranks. We've talked about them, and some of them were funny, some of them maybe not as funny, and I guess one question I would ask him is that do you regret doing any of those? I think at root, from everything I've read, I think at root he generally meant well. Usually when he would trash a place, he would pay for it. Which, okay, maybe he shouldn't have trashed it, but at least he did pay for it, right? So, there was that. He kind of made good on what he did, but do you regret doing any of them? There was one famous trashing of this Flint, Michigan hotel for his birthday that, maybe was a little over the top.
Was that the birthday cake? That was everywhere, and he knocked his 2 teeth out?
Yeah, and I knocked a tooth out and was too drunk to be sedated for the...
Oh, wow.
So,
they talked a little bit about that.
Maybe you regret some of this.
But the cake one started out as kind of like innocent... I don't know how innocent. Like innocent fun. Like they got a bunch of cake for him to like throw. So they're like all in this room, and he's in his... Like they're in their underwear, and they're just going to throw cake at each other. And so...
Because who doesn't do that?
Right. It's just sort of a bizarre. Yeah, it's like kind of a bizarre birthday. But why not throw cake? You know what I mean? Like there's probably YouTube channels on people that like cake thrown at them.
There's probably an instructional YouTube video on how to throw cake in your underwear.
Right. Well, then so it starts out there. And then the story is like he's
Google that. You check that out.
Yeah. Well.
Or it's up here.
Or someone
check that out.
They put it in the chat. And so if this is what they're doing, and then he's up on this table, and then he steps in some cake and slips, and he knocks his two teeth out.
Knocks a tooth.
Yeah. So that happens. But it didn't start out as like this, like really. It wasn't like they had an orgy planned, right? It was just like we're gonna go in a room and throw cake at each other. So it wasn't. Yeah. Yeah, so the Michigan, the one I was thinking about that, and I don't like is the question was the one where he puts too much explosive in his bass drum.
Oh yeah.
And the video of that is just amazing.
Literally almost blew them off
yeah, well, part of a cymbal slices his arm.
Yeah.
And I guess Peter Townsend is loses hearing for a little bit.
Right. Pete Townsend's pretty deaf now, and part of it, it's not just that one incident because they used to do this all the time, but that one didn't help. He was very close to where that went off.
Yeah, well, yes, it was at a Holiday Inn, the 21st birthday party I took.
Yeah, at the Flint Holiday Inn.
Yeah, 21st birthday party at Holiday Inn.
And Flint has not been the same ever since. Flint was a thriving city when they did this,
and
look where it is now. So I'm just saying,
So Flint, Michigan should have a lawsuit against. They should. It's Wembley.
Should go after the estate of Keith Moon to the extent there is still
as part of these Brexit negotiations that Trump. I don't know. I read some article about some Brexit negotiations going on, and it was they're selling the NHS or something was part of this nonsense. And maybe we need Flint, Michigan to get their due. So that might be
Well, and some of that money should go to Flint.
So that money needs to go to Flint.
Yeah.
Because of Keith Moon and the prank.
Right.
Yeah. So the big explosion. So So there was one any regrets.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like. Is that?
Is
explosives seem like at some point that's going to go too far.
Well, he loved explosives. He would, in addition to all the drumsticks he'd bring on stage, he'd bring like M80s, cherry bombs. He loved flushing them down hotel toilets. Some hotels knew about this and just wouldn't even let him register. Some found out about it, after he was in there, and they said, you leave. Well, in fact, one hotel actually packed his bags, packed all their group's bags, sent them to the concert venue, and just said, "Don't come back. Just don't. We're done. Just stay. Just go somewhere else." So, he was into this.
But and the whole, so I liked, as a kid, I had a chemistry set, and I would make stuff, and some of the stuff would explode, and some of the stuff wouldn't explode, and I remember I had burnt a hole in my parents' table. It was like out on the porch. It was like a fiberglassy type table. It was fairly brand new, and I had the whole chemistry set out there, and the whole thing explodes. And now there's like a big hole, like burnt hole in this, in the table. But that experience got me really excited about chemistry in school. Like I was like, chemistry's cool because you can make things that explode.
Well, and then your next thought, I'm sure, was to get in your underwear and throw some cake. Okay?
No, I can't. It really wasn't.
Because, who doesn't do that?
Who doesn't throw cake in their own? But my question is there's in his childhood, I was intrigued by the feedback he got from his instructors. And so I understood. So my question related to this is, did his school instructors didn't seem the most motivational bunch, and so was there what was his perception of how motivation? Here's a quote from his elementary school teacher. So can you imagine you're talking to an elementary school child, and this is the feedback that that
elementary child is Keith Moon.
It's Keith Moon. But still,
keep that in mind.
Like, what child do you give this feedback to? Retarded artistically, idiotic in any other respects. And this is his music teacher.
I mean, that's not going to help anybody.
Right.
I mean, that's a really
like, how offensive is that? My gosh. And so this is the feedback he's getting in elementary school. I mean, what chance? Like, it seems like he's got a passion for chemistry, but what chance do you have with teachers like this? I can see like if you have teachers teaching like this, why you'd have that kind of rebellion. My question
I don't see education as like a big career move for him after hearing this.
Right.
I can't wait to get out of school. Right?
And how much did that influence him? How much did that for better or worse, that elementary education that he got in elementary? When they say this is London elementary, so I think that means up through middle school is what they're.
Yeah.
I think. And if you're from London and you watch this, please set it straight.
Yeah.
But he's
type it in and just correct us.
Of course. But how much did that influence him to want, later on, and kind of like either affected him in terms of, well, I can't do much else other than play music, or because this awesome feedback he's getting, instead of like pursuing like a career in chemistry. Not that I want Keith Moon to go into chemistry. I'm just saying, like,
that's a scary thought.
I'm
kind of glad he didn't go into chemistry. He kind of did, actually.
Yeah, well, he has. But is that negative? Did this negative event end up having a positive outcome, because he does end up going in and doing he ends up becoming a great drummer. So
yeah, he had a very successful career
in drumming.
Yeah.
So that's my question.
Okay. My next question would be.
This is question 5. I'm counting.
We're up to question 5. Yes.
Yeah, we're already in question 5.
Gosh, we are zipping along.
And if you're just joining us, make sure you put comments. Let us know you're watching, and we're glad you're watching.
We are. We're glad you're watching. Glad you're whether you're watching live or watching on replay. We appreciate it. My next question, I think a drummer as outsized a talent as Keith Moon, everybody's got their favorite Keith Moon drum performance. Everybody's got their favorite song that's his best drum performance.
Yeah.
I know what mine are. I've got two really. One really definite, and the other is probably second. My personal favorite, Happy Jack.
Happy Jack.
Song.
Why do you like Happy Jack?
It just, that drum, his drum in that, it's kind of an odd beat, and it goes from subtle to profound to subtle, and it's like a 7/8 time or something. It's a really weird signature. It's good. You listen to Happy Jack, you'll like it. My second is My Generation. One of their very early songs.
Yeah, I like that. I mean,
and I think there he just lays out full surf rock. He just blows it up in that. So those two are my favorite. Happy Jack, I think, is number one. My Generation be number two. I guess I would ask, what would his have been? What did he think was his best performance, best song that he had performed on drums? I don't know that I saw anywhere that he had a favorite, or I think a lot of Who fans I've read say, well, Happy Jack, or they've got a few others, but what was
which
his?
one?
What do you think?
Which one did he really enjoy playing?
Yeah,
or was more jazz inspired? Yeah, great question. Like, at some point you playing music over and over again. Did he ever? I remember Jimi Hendrix's quote was, "Some of when I'm playing on stage, it's not just for you. I got to be entertained too. Otherwise, it's not a good performance. And so I change things up just to stay entertained."
Right.
As I'm playing. And so what did he do to stay entertained as he's playing the songs, or is there just a song he enjoyed so much that right? Yeah, let's rock it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I don't know that I've read that anywhere, and I don't know. I'm not sure what I would say is his best drum performance on Tommy, specifically the album Tommy. I do have two favorite songs from Tommy, and it's not any of the hits. Two favorite songs are Christmas, because I think it shows really the Who's range with that song, and you get the introduction of a couple of the themes, including the See Me, Feel Me is introduced in that song. So Christmas is one, and
that's
second,
on side two. That's on side two.
Yeah, side two. And then the other one I think is on side 4. It's toward the end of Tommy, Sally Simpson. It's just, it furthers the narrative, and it kind of tells the story of Tommy when he's the guru. It's just kind of a nice song. I just like it as a song. I think even if it wasn't part of Tommy, musically it's nice, and I don't know. I just like it. So those two, Christmas and Sally Simpson, my two favorites.
I think an early favorite of mine was Pinball Wizard. Even before I really knew who the Who was, I enjoyed listening to the Pinball Wizard. Mm-hmm. It was just a fun song, and then as I listened to it, I was like, "There's actually a story in the song," and so that was my first introduction to Tommy before I knew about Tommy the rock opera. Mm-hmm. It was just listening to that song and realize that they're singing a story about somebody. We're not going to take it. I like that one too.
Yeah.
You got Tommy's Holiday Camp. Short it's just.
And I guess I do have to give a special mention to. I'd mentioned that there was an old Sonny Boy Williamson song that the Who rewrote a little bit. They changed some of the lyrics and changed the music slightly. Eyesight to the Blind. It's an old Delta blues song. You can, if you listen to the Sonny Boy Williamson one, it's, more. I mean, it's a blues song even on Tommy. It's a very blues structure and everything, but it's definitely a Delta blues song from Sonny Boy Williamson, recast a little bit, and you got to appreciate that one too. And I guess that, this is kind of a side question. It's like, why'd you pick that? I mean, they wrote all the other songs. I guess I understand he's deaf, dumb, and blind, and I guess you're, okay, but couldn't you have written? I mean, you sort of wrote, the Acid Queen is kind of the same, told the same story basically. So I don't know. Why'd you do that? Why'd you pick that? Nice song, great song. I mean, really great blues and great in Tommy, but why?
Yeah. That may be, is that a question for Keith? That's probably a Keith question for
That'd probably
Peter Townsend.
Yeah, that'd probably be.
So the question for you, for Keith Moon would be, which was his favorite song?
Yeah.
On the whole. Sorry, I was trying to maintain a chat over here as this thing was going on my phone on mute.
We have someone chatting?
Yes.
Wow. We should give special recognition to the chatter or chattors, if there are more than one.
Especially, well, I think, I don't know if Abby's still watching. Abby was out there chatting with us, and I think we have somebody from,
Hey, Abby.
Hi, Abby. And then there's the somebody who's I'm not sure who they are, but they're watching. So if you want to leave a comment,
I'm not sure who you are.
Watching our live podcast here. Mm-hmm. So our question on the best song was, I wanted to lead that into, they talks about some of his influences. There's a story about him when he's hyperactive as a kid, and the kind of
it's easy enough to believe,
yeah. Right? And so
he was kind of hyperactive as an adult too. So I mean,
so my first question was about this. He joins the Sea Cadets, mm-hmm. and he joins the Sea Cadets to play the bugle. And so as he's playing the bugle, like the story is the bugle's too hard for him to learn. So then they give him the drums to play, and then he loves playing the drums, and he does awesome on the drums. Did that experience, because he goes on to become just a great musician in general, did that experience, what was that experience like for him? I guess, not being able to play the bugle, or is that just like, whatever, I didn't get to play the bugle, I played the drums, or was that like did that influence, was that some kind of influencing factor for him going forward? Mm-hmm. So,
we were talking a little bit before, and I struggle with Keith Moon playing the bugle in particular, but really any instrument other than drums. I can't imagine that the bugle was physical enough for him, and even guitar. And maybe on keyboard, kind of like a Screamin' Jay Hawkins or Jerry Lee Lewis type of guy or something, but I really can't. It's hard to picture him playing anything other than drums.
Yeah, especially if you're hyperactive. Really, that didn't really get the energy out of you.
Yeah,
so maybe there was a better question there. Yeah. Is because he goes on to talk about, like, he walks in, like, that drum experience from the Sea Cadet Corps. Then he walks into this guy, Carlo Little. He's the drummer for Screaming Lord, such. And
the British have great names for odd. If they have an odd band, they name it really well.
There's actually a Lord Such that's like running for Parliament all the time too. In I think the 80s. Mm-hmm. So Screaming Lord Such,
same guy. I think it's the same guy.
Yes, and so but Carlo's not. I think the drum teacher is different. I'm not.
Oh, okay. The drum teacher is the Carlo.
But Carlo Little, mm-hmm. what fascinates me about Carlo Little is just known, like when you read into Carlo Little is this loud drummer. Like he doesn't just play the bass, he like slams the bass. He's just wailing on the bass drum in this band in London. And so what are the odds of hooking this guy up with Keith Moon? So Keith Moon, and then there's a interview on this documentary on Keith Moon. They have Carlo Little there, and Carlo Little's remembering, like, the way he remembers Keith Moon walking in is that he walks in and just hands him the money and just, like, doesn't even say anything. He's just like, he walks in, hands him the money, and is just like, you must teach me the drums. And so that is Keith Moon walking in, just kind of like throws the money at him. It's like, you're going to teach me the drums. And so Carlo Little's like, show me what you can do. And Carlito's response is he takes like the back end of some drumsticks. And, like first he plays like the normal kind of standard rock beat, and then Carlo Little, his first advice to him is like, he's like, you gotta loosen up. You need to play loud. You don't play with the. If they told you to hold your sticks traditionally, play with the back of the stick. And I want you to just let go. I want you to really beat on these drums. And like when you look at how his style of how loose he plays the drums, that comes out. So like obviously that had to influence him. I just be curious. I like to hear from Keith. What was it like being taught by this guy that was, by Carlo Little, and how much did that bring out? How much did you carry that through to the rest of your drumming? Or because we talked about that beach music, and that was a big influence on him too. So I guess Carlo Little, the bugle incident, how much did that kind of influence? It obviously influenced him. It seems like it influenced him some. I like to hear it from him on how he processed it, and was that something he thought about as he's going forward, and is like, oh yeah, Carl Little told me to loosen up, and just really pound on it, or was it just sort of like, my teacher did it, so I'm doing it?
Well, I can tell you at least the instruction on playing with the back of the sticks, turning the sticks around, because you get more louder sound doing that. You can hammer more. He did that. That drumstick that I got from the 1968 concert was all nicked up on the handle.
Because he's pounding on the rim.
Because he was holding the ends of it, the tips of it, and slamming
and the cymbals too. That's got to be like.
It had all these nicks on the handle. So he did that. He actually did that. So he took that instruction and kept that.
Yeah. So it seems like he took the instruction, and then I guess the question would be I would like to hear from Keith, like how did he feel about that overall influence? That throws the question back over to you.
All right. Well, I have a question that's going to...
This is question 9. Wow, we're already on question 9.
Are we? Really?
Yeah, we're on question 9.
Wow.
Yeah, we've been talking for 37 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Time flies. This has gone as fast as a Keith Moon drum solo for me. So, next question, we've talked about some of the famous work that Keith Moon did, Tommy, and some of the other famous work that he did. He, in the mid-'70s, right around the time the movie Tommy came out, he put out a solo album. And I think in part he just did that because a lot of the other guys in The Who, basically everybody else in The Who, was putting out a solo album at that time. He figured he should too. And I've listened to it, and it's kind of a struggle to listen to. There's the first song is actually pretty good. It has kind of a David Bowie feel to it. In the mid-'70s, that kind of makes sense, but it's, and it's definitely got Keith Moon's drums. I later read that the reason that song is better than the others, that's the only one he actually played drums on. It's like, what was up with it? Why? What are you doing, Keith? I mean, you didn't really need to put out a solo album. If you wanted to put one out, why didn't you play on it? I mean, that song you played on is actually pretty good. The rest of it, it's kind of a struggle to listen to the rest of it. It was hard.
Well, but don't artists it's sort of like maybe he wants to create. I mean, that artistic feeling, and he wants to create, and so. If you get, how do you break out of the right? I would say that maybe the rest of the wrong word. Like you do something, like if we finally get a podcast that millions of people like, do we have to do that same genre of podcast over and over again? Right? Like we're having a lot of fun.
Well, that is kind of the music industry model. That if you find something that works, you beat the crap out of it, and you squeeze every last nickel out of that. And
so what artistically does?
And then when that fails, you find a new group. I mean, that is kind of the model for the music industry.
It is, but when you watch like.
Not a good one necessarily. I'm not defending
we were talking about Rick Ocasek.
That is kind of what they do. But.
It was like he needed to go into production. You need to go into producing, so there's something different that was going on, and so and just trying to expand. So maybe that, what I mean? Like I think it's a great question. What was going on? I don't know. Like I think part of the reason would be that just being creative artistically.
Mm-hmm. That could be, and it's interesting too. I mean, Pete Townsend has had a pretty good solo career. separate from the Who. But really, the rest of the group's solo albums, Keith Moon's included, I don't think really rose to the level of the Who, and they're not really that listened to anymore. They worked really well as the four of them, and not as well maybe when they went their separate ways.
And I think it's hard. I mean, not everyone does. Well, that's the is it the band versus the artist, right? Is it like the Who is a marketing word, and so there's different people that have composed of the Who over time. Obviously, Keith Moon was the original drummer, but then the Who stayed together with different people.
Yeah, they got a different drummer after he died.
Yeah, but if sometimes the lead vocalist becomes marketed too, and so that name becomes. I think about when we did the Cars. You talk about Orr versus Ocasek.
Right, we did, yeah.
Rick Ocasek. And so, I mean, is it, you know what I mean? Like you have this one, if one person is just sort of marketed out front all the time, it's sometimes easier just to get their stuff sold.
Well, it's true, and interesting. I mean, using the Who, I mean, the guy out front was always Roger Daltrey, who was kind of the face of the Who.
Yeah. So you're saying
the musical core of it really was Peter Townsend, but Roger Daltrey was the lead singer, the one you saw, the voice of the
so like, why didn't Daltrey's?
Daltrey was, he was plenty famous at the time, but his solo album was good, but it didn't. I don't think people are still talking about it like people are still talking about Tommy and talking about a lot of the Who work.
Yeah.
That people are going to keep talking about, and I don't know that any of their solo work really rose to that level. They worked really well together.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Townsend was lead vocals on some of the songs. Yeah, so but yeah.
Yeah, Townsend was a singer also.
So they were both. But no, I hear your point is that that they both had opportunities to go well, and what was up. Why didn't Moon? But, Moon seemed to be very. He's not. I suspect the character Animal from Muppets had to be based off of him.
It's like if Keith Moon and I don't know, John Bonham or something had a baby. That's probably Animal. Or Ginger Baker maybe. Animal looked a little more like Ginger Baker. Maybe. So
with the big fight, and he's just Animal. He's going. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you have. Yeah, so you have this character that's popular in that time frame, but is known for all the really just living up to the caricature of a rock and roll band. So I guess he had the publicity. Is just the songs just didn't take off. So maybe so your question is like, what was his artistic process on?
Yeah, and I mean,
developing the album?
Did he put that album out just because? Hey, the other three guys are doing solos, and I got to do one. And if you're going to do one, then why did you pick that music, and why did you have another drummer? You got Keith. You're Keith Moon. You don't need another drummer. You are the drummer, dude. You play. Who's gonna play like you? Nobody is playing like you. You should drum on these songs.
Yeah.
I don't know. He sang, and he wasn't a horrible singer, but he wasn't a great singer. Daltrey and Townsend both were better, and I don't know that I ever heard John Entwistle sing, but sight unseen, he might have been a better singer too. Certainly the two main singers in the Who were much better singers than Keith Moon, so I'm not sure why that was orchestrated the way it was. I don't know. It was the mid-'70s. There was a lot of confusion going on, maybe. I don't know. But other than that, I can't explain it. Not to quote a Who song. I can't explain.
Can't explain. Well, that leads us into question 10. I need you to help me develop this question. So this is kind of amorphous here. We've talked about what some of his influences are, but so a couple of things. There's some key people that are in the background. I'll say the background. They're actually key to his. I mean, he's married at age 19, and has a daughter, and so that's part of who Keith Moon is during this time frame. And he also has this personal assistant, Peter Butler, I guess goes by Dougal. Go by as Dougal. And so that what's it like being a rock and roll star? I can see like the first album before they're still just busting up all the equipment. He's married and has a daughter. Then once Tommy hits, he becomes a millionaire, or on the way to become a millionaire, and really is now able to move after that into L.A. and starts. Then a few years later, they have Tommy the Opera, and so he's living this caricature of a rock and roll lifestyle, and obviously his marriage falls apart, but it how did much of that affect him, and what that relationship there's that relationship that he has with his wife, and then he has this longer relationship with Dougal, his personal assistant, who stays with him for a long time until the very end before the overdose on anti-alcohol medication. Who then he just has to leave him because he's like, I'm like, one of us is gonna die and I don't want it to be me. Like how?
Well, yeah, I mean his drinking. From a lot of the stuff I've read, his drinking, he went from the fun drunk who would rip up the pants and pay for him, to kind of a not so much fun drunk as time went on. And then maybe that was part of the solo album effort. That was probably a pretty heavy, not pleasant drunk period, because that was only a couple years before he died.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, there's alcohol there, but I think back, like obviously the alcohol's inflection his relationships too. And so how did, maybe the question is what relationship did he view as being important? What was that relationship that he really valued that kept him going? I mean, obviously he loved playing in the Who, but there was a darker side, obviously, like when he didn't. Yeah. He all indications is he loved the celebrity, but when you're not on stage, not everybody's screaming at you anymore, right? And so if you're living for celebrity, and then you have to go out to breakfast and nobody recognizes you, or you're at your home with your wife and daughter, you don't have this screaming fans of you're not a god anymore. There's this different feeling you have. Who is that person that you rely on in that kind of environment, that crazy environment that you would? I mean, he's obviously talented, so he knows he's a celebrity for a reason, so that's good. But like, who does he rely? What was that key relationship maybe that he relied on just to? If you have that kind of personality that you love the celebrity, that allowed him to do as well as he did for so long. I mean, man, like just the amount of alcohol that he's rumored to have drank is just wow.
Oh yeah, no, I tend to believe the rumors. And that's a good question though about the relationships, because Keith Moon, I think, is very different from his fellow Wembley native Charlie Watts, who loved playing the Rolling Stones, has been with them for 55 plus years, so obviously enjoys playing with them, but likes to go home. I mean, when he's done, he'd rather be at home and record, and doesn't like to go on tour. Keith Moon, from what I've read, and I think this even came from John Entwistle, the bass player of the Who, they were probably the closest. Entwistle was probably the closest to Keith Moon, and he said, the guy's never off. You get off stage, he's still not off. So he had no off switch.
Right, and so and there's expectation, like even if you want to be off, and everybody thinks that you're on all the time. Now he's like, I got to be on because everybody thinks I got to be on. Yeah, so that's a huge amount of pressure someone would have.
Yeah,
if you're in that environment.
Well, and it's self-pressure too. If you're always, I mean, just think, if you're always at, and especially his level of intensity, it wasn't like he was playing, calm. I don't think he ever did anything calm, that I am aware of. So he, at his level of intensity, he was like that all the time. Yeah, it's going to cause some problems.
Yeah,
it did. it did cause some problems,
Oh yeah, it did, and it ended unfortunately
Yeah.
for him. I mean, it's like you end up attracting these bad people around you. But then on a positive note, I think, I mean, the legacy of Keith Moon as a drummer and just
his
how
musical legacy is unquestioned. It's I mean, it's for whatever unfortunate things happened in his personal life, which quite a bit did. You just listen to him play the drums. You really see the artistry, the intensity that he had. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, just growing up, I didn't appreciate, like, I love percussion in the music, and it's just kind of recently, whereas I've been listening, like, what songs do I like? And it's always songs with, like, great percussion on them. And so that's been really enjoyable for me just to kind of dig into these drummers, what's their backstory on them. I mean, like we were talking about, the juxtaposition of Keith Moon versus, like, Charlie Watts is so night and day, but the drumming style, this jazz drumming style they have, is compatible and is comparable. It's just like, it's just, I think,
I mean, you can if you listen, to the Stones versus the Who. I mean, you can kind of tell. Well, that's you can tell the slightly different style, but hey, they're both. I mean, they're both like perennially going to be listed in the top 10 rock drummers of all time, right? So,
right.
Yeah, they're completely different guys. Born in the same neighborhood too.
Well, Steve, I think we did it. We came up with 10 questions.
Wow.
We would want to ask Keith Moon. We did it this time in 52 minutes. So
shorter than we usually talk too long.
Yeah, sometimes we go like an hour and 30.
We've gone an hour and a half before, so you are fortunate, ladies and gentlemen.
You had a fan that criticized the whole show. Remember, she was like,
That's right.
Because
you didn't let me talk.
Didn't let you talk, and we have like 10 questions. We each come up with like one question. So I think it's 50-50. It's like we each develop a question that.
Yeah, and we don't sit and we don't time the like say, oh, you had 53 lines and I only had 51, so we don't do that. Or you talked for 18 minutes and I talked for 16, so
Right, maybe put that in the comments. Like, who do you want to hear talk more? And you just put that in the comments, and then we can just use that.
Yeah. If your comment is that you'd rather hear neither of us talk, then put that in the comments too.
Put in the comments too, right?
And then add who you would. Don't just be negative. Just say who you would like to hear talk.
Who would you like to see on the show? We could reasonably. Yeah.
I mean, you're a physics professor, whatever, whoever you would like to hear talk in place of us. Because many people could be more interesting. It's hard to imagine who, but some could be interesting.
Oh, yeah. I think we need to just end it right now. I
think we should probably end it. We're probably good. Yeah,
probably good. So if you're watching a replay, thanks for joining us. Make sure you leave comments in the discussion section. If you have a band you want us to talk about, put that in the comments section. That'd be awesome. If you make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. So just slam that notification bell. Be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
And before you leave YouTube, go find some of those old Who songs and listen to them. You will, if you're not familiar with the Who, go Google them, check them out. They're all on YouTube. You'll love it.